Jon-Eric Sullivan, the vice president of player personnel of the Green Bay Packers, is the name chosen by the new circle of trust of Stephen Ross's in Miami for the Dolphins' new general manager. How does that inform you about John Harbaugh potentially going there or not? There doesn't seem to be much of a connection there. It doesn't mean that Harbaugh's not coming, but it seems like they made a decision based on what they think is best for the organization as a whole, long-term, not about trying to get Harbaugh in the mix this hiring cycle. Albert, is that a fair reading of a tea leaf here? What do you think?
I would just go through like the timeline here. Now a couple of weeks ago, I wrote that the one way I could see Mike McDaniel being let go would be if something changed on the coaching market and someone like Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh became available. I don't need to take you through the connections between Stephen Ross and the Harbaugh family. That's well established, right? Like through Ross having his name on the business school at Michigan and obviously Harbaugh's history at Michigan, like that relationship's there. Steve Ross made a very spirited run at Jim Harbaugh in 2011 when he was still at Stanford. Harbaugh chose to go to the Niners. And he'd even like quietly discussed the idea of pursuing John Harbaugh in 2019 when the Ravens were in a contract negotiation with Harbaugh. And obviously that one worked out where he stayed in Baltimore. But this is something that's been on Steve Ross's mind for some time. So then on Monday, they put out requests to 6 general manager candidates. All 6 of those, Jon-Eric Sullivan included, had some sort of connection to Mike McDaniel. Now, in Sullivan's case, it's that he worked for Matt LaFleur, who is one of Mike McDaniel's best friends, right? Like, so he has some familiarity with what Mike McDaniel was doing in Miami, all of that. So they put those 6 requests out Monday. On Tuesday, the Chargers get the request for Chad Alexander, who, of course, works with Jim Harbaugh in L.A. and was in Baltimore for over a decade with John Harbaugh. So I think that got everybody's attention when later in the day, Baltimore winds up pulling the plug on John Harbaugh. So I think it'd be foolish not to think that John Harbaugh's availability had some sort of effect on Miami's week. And the fact that they let go of Mike McDaniel on Thursday rather than on Monday or Tuesday. That said, I think they also recognize that there's going to be competition for John Harbaugh out there. And they recognize that there's no assurance that they're going to wind up landing him. And because of the way the rules are, like you can't have candidates in person until after the divisional round to satisfy the Rooney Rule. You have to have, and this is candidates who work for a team, right? So if it's somebody who doesn't work for a team, you can have them in now. But if they work for a team, you can't have them in until after the divisional round. And so you can't, like, unless you're really unless you're really running around the Rooney Rule, you can't really hire anybody until after the divisional round. So a lot has to happen between now and then, And so I think the Dolphins, things changed in the way that they were looking at Mike McDaniel as the coaching market evolved, and Harbaugh is a part of that. And they see some more options out there for them. So, okay, like we see better options than maybe we thought there were going to be a week ago. And so we feel better about going forward with that and going with a clean slate. Troy Aikman is part of this process. And Troy Aikman, I know, has preached them alignment. Troy Aikman did really like Jon-Eric Sullivan for whatever it's worth. And, now I think they go in and John Harbaugh is 100% a part of their equation, but they know there's a chance they don't get him. And so we're going to go with the best general manager candidate. And I think for them, I think they like some of the other guys, but Jon-Eric Sullivan's somebody who has a lot of the same qualities that Brian Gutekunst had when the Packers elevated him to succeed Ted Thompson. And, what they were looking for in GM was a dyed-in-the-wool scout. They have a guy named Brandon Shore who they elevated from cap guy into a role like and I know Tony Pastore's in LA, right, Rich? Mm-hmm. Mike Disner in Detroit, like this 3-headed monster where you have a cap/analytics/operations guy over here, a general manager as a scout, and a coach all reporting to the owner. So Brandon Shore in that role, in the cap operations analytics role. You have Jon-Eric Sullivan as kind of the head scout, GM, and then you're going to have the coach reporting to the owner. So that's the way the whole thing played out. And I know that was a little long-winded, but that's the whole story as I know it.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.